Afternoon. Dwayne here, Dry Creek Wrangler School. I'm sitting down here in the backside of a ranch in Caldwell, Idaho. Mom and I brought some horses down, spending 2 or 4 days with our kids that live here and our grandbabies. And she went out to breakfast with the mamas and the babies this morning, and I kind of stayed back and enjoyed my solitude this morning, and wanted to make a video. We brought 3 horses down to my boys that I've had for the summer. 2 of the horses belong to 2 of my sons, and then my other son, he bought one of the horses we had at the school. He bought Chance, and so we brought the 3 back. And then we also brought Boone down. Now, you guys that have been with us for a long time, you're very familiar with Boone. Boone's our old man. He's been with us the longest, and he last couple of years he's developed arthritis, and he just doesn't get around as well as he used to. And a few weeks ago, Mama took him out on one of the rides, and it was an easy ride, but he was just hurting. And so we officially retired him. And I was thinking about the time that Boone has spent with us, and my dad told me a story years ago. Of course, those of you who've been on here for a long time, you know that originally we're from Kentucky. I'm 7th generation of my family, born right there in the hills of central Kentucky. And there was an old woman years ago. She hit 90, and she figured she had learned everything that she was ever going to learn, had done everything that she could do, and there wasn't any point in living anymore. So she went over and climbed in her bed and said, "I'm just going to lay here and die. I'm done." And she lay there for a while, and the little neighbor girl come skipping over and knocked on the door and came in. And back in those days, before lighters and matches and all that stuff, a lot of times what you do is you'd go borrow a coal from a neighbor if you need to build a fire. And you get one of their coals down in their fireplace or their stove, and you take it back, and it was still kind of red and burning and hot. And she come over and she said, "Granny, Mama wanted me to come over and get a coal, see if I could get a coal to start a fire." And the granny said, "Sure, child, but you have nothing to carry it in. What are you going to do?" And the little girl said, "Oh, that's okay." And she went and she got into the fireplace, and she scooped up a handful of cold ashes. And then she got that coal and put that coal upon those cold ashes, so it wouldn't burn her, and just turned around and skipped happily back home. And the granny said, "Well, I guess I haven't learned everything there is to learn." And so she got up and went on about her business and continued life. And when I got Boone, his life had been different than it was with me. I don't know a lot. I know he had been trail ridden some. I know he had spent time in the arena. I tested him on some things. He knew what the poles for pole bending were. He was no stranger to barrels in a barrel racing pattern. And when I put him in a roping box, he kind of just went. He got just too excited, like an old roping horse will do. He just wigged out, not out of fear, just out of just absolute. And when I exploded out of the box to chase the spear, he prompted the steer. He just took off dead running, and then just threw a bucking fit, which he had never done, and bucked me off. And I got back on, and we went through that about 4 times, and he just got more and more agitated in the chute. And so I said, well, okay, I had no intention of turning him into this. I just want to see what he knew. So he had had a life of play up to that point. Well, when I got him, I spent some time redirecting his training, teaching him responsibility, teaching him to be calm, teaching him to follow signals, teaching him to work. And he was my cow horse, man. We've been over miles and miles of rough country pushing a lot of cattle. Then when we started, we went back to wrangling. He was my lead wrangler horse. When we started the school, he was our main horse. A life of work and responsibility, which he performed exemplary. I don't think there'll ever be a horse that will have a warmer place in the heart of this family than old Boone. His heart was as big as this truck. Even when he's hurting and grunting and stiff, he's giving it everything he's got. So we said, okay, we're not gonna, you've earned the rest, old man. You've earned it. But I don't think that necessarily means that you have to have a life of no value to yourself or to anybody else. So we have several grandchildren down here. The oldest is 7. And so we brought him down here, and now he can just stand and eat and relax, but still teach these little kids. We led him around yesterday. I mean, just like 15, 20 minutes just with a little bitty child on him, and he just put his head down and walked and took care of him. And my grandson, my granddaughter is the oldest. She loves animals. She loves to ride. She's fearless. Her brother, the next one down, he's more of a gearhead. He loves anything with tractors and bulldozers and trucks and motorcycles. And he was a little bit unsure. He was a little trepidatious. And but he wanted to, so we put him on and worked with him and led old Boone around. And we're just walking him with this child on his back. And the boy, he settled down and he calmed down and he started smiling. And so Boone done put another one on the right track to not be afraid of horses and to appreciate horses. So he still has purpose, but he has the life that an old man has earned, that he's earned. And you know, I think there's a lot of men and women, but you guys know how my brain works. Okay, I talk to the men, and if the women can get anything out of it, if it helps them, that's great. There's a lot of old men out there that we get to the age, and I'm not old. I look a lot older than I am, and that's mostly the beard. All right, as you know, I'm only 57, but there's been a lot of miles in those 57 years, and we can't do what we used to do. And the harder we went in our youth, the less we can do in our age. We know more, but physically we're starting to pay the price for the damage that we sustained in our youth. And we can't do what we used to do. And some men, as they start getting up in years, they start getting depressed about that. Or worse, they start resenting it, and they get grouchy and they get bitter because they're just not the man that they used to be. None of us are ever the man that we used to be. None of us can forever do what we used to do. But hopefully, like myself, I cannot physically do everything that I used to do. I do not ride bucking horses anymore. I don't do it. Now, unless I'm on them and they surprise me and I don't have a choice. Then I do my best to stay on, because as bad as that buck hurts, it don't hurt as bad as hitting the ground does. But if I have a choice, if my years of experience and my years of knowledge and my years of working with horses and reading horses and teaching horses, if in that time I see a horse and I'm like, I'm not convinced that horse isn't going to test me, I'm not convinced that horse isn't going to break in half on me, I won't get on. I won't do it. I don't need to do it. I can't do what I used to do. All right. But I know more than I used to know. And so that's what I go to. That's what I use. I've had young men working at the school and working on the place last couple of years, and fine young men. And what I am able to do is I'm able to stand at the arena while they're riding, and they've got a young horse that's kind of, or maybe not so young, but it's just a little more frosty. And so I can stand there and I can say, this is what we got going on. We had a horse earlier this year. One of them was riding, and that horse was really boiling up. You could see the pressure build, and you could see that horse was agitated and was really starting to say, I've had about enough of this, because this is really bothering me. But the young man could not figure out what was bothering the horse. And so I stood there and watched for a little bit. And I said, the horse is scared of this. This is what is making the horse. He's not listening to you, because right now he's extremely nervous that this is fixing to happen. And so when they tried it, that's what it was. That's what happened. I did not have to get on that horse and figure that horse out. I wasn't going to get on the horse. But I was able to stand on the ground calmly, smoking a cigar, quietly watching, and say, somewhere in that horse's past, somebody really overused spurs on that horse. They didn't use them properly and they overused them. You have spurs on. And I said, now you're not using the spurs. I mean, I'm sitting here watching. You're not even using the spurs on this horse. But the horse knows you have spurs on. So the horse is so anticipating what you're fixing to do to him, because it's what's always been done with those spurs. He can't relax and he can't listen to you. So they got off, took the spurs off, and like I said, they weren't even using the spurs. They just had them on their boots. They took the spurs off and got back on, and the horse just calmed and settled down. Now, we're able to do that, you and I, whatever the equivalent to that is in your world, we're able to do that because we learned. We did utilize the brain, and we learned while we were young and limber. And we were full of fire, and we could do whatever. But we started putting back experience. We started putting back a little bit of knowledge. We started putting back a habit of watching and seeing. And we didn't always, in our youth, we didn't always utilize our brain. We didn't always utilize what we had learned. But we were always learning. And as one horse trainer, I heard him say a long time ago, I think it was Buck Brannaman, he said when he was, and I may have this not at 100% right, but basically I think what he said was, when I was young, I was 90% brawn and 10% brains. But now that I'm older, I try to use 90% brains and 10% brawn. You can do that if, while you have the 90% brawn, you're still building the brains. We don't always use them, but you still got them. And then when you don't have the brawn so much anymore that you used to, you have the knowledge and the experience and the thoughtfulness to make that switch over to. You know, when we're young, we're charging out of the roping gate, and we're charging through the poles and around the barrels and stuff when we're super young. And then when we move into that next stage of life, we're working. We're putting our head down and we're working. working hard, doing life, doing what needs to be done, building things and fixing things and but that stage doesn't last forever. And there comes a time when we have to willingly, graciously transition over to that final stage where we're teaching little children that they don't have to be afraid of the horse, when we're showing a better way. My 7-year-old granddaughter is a very vivacious young lady, very exuberant, very energetic. And so yesterday we went out and I told her, I said, with horses, there has to be one word that you have to learn it has to pervade through everything you do with horses. And she said, what's that? I said, the word is calm. You have to be calm. And so she listened to me, and she still chattered 90 mile an hour nonstop, but her movements and everything calmed down. And she got on Boone and she talked nonstop, which is what children are supposed to do a lot of times, okay? But she calmed down internally. And so Boone and I started putting her on a path, on a journey that will help her in her later years with her horsemanship. And I have no doubt, given the opportunity, that that's what she's going to turn into. She's going to be a heck of a horsewoman. But it took two old timers, myself and Boone, to say, okay, I'm not going to jump on the horse, and we're not going to run around and we're going to show how you do this with horses and how you do that and how you're going to do this. He wasn't interested. I wasn't interested. But we switched to that third transition where we said we're going to use our brains and we're going to teach the youth, the young ones, that the things that we wish we had known, the things I wish I had known when I was young. And it's a natural progression through life. It's a natural progression. I think one of the biggest crimes I've been out in Western culture since I graduated high school. Been out here, worked on a lot of ranches, and there is a tendency out here, and those of you who are Westerners, cowboys, horse trainers, different stuff, you will nod your head and you will attest that this is true. It is not normal for old cowboys and old horsemen to on their own mentor young upcoming cowboys and horsemen. They hold their secrets really, really tight, and they just watch you go through. And I've always thought that was a shame, because these men have a bottomless wealth of experience and information that they could pass on that would not only help the young person coming up, but would save a lot of horses a lot of grief too. But it's kind of something that's all too often is not done. We retreat into ourselves, and and I do that. I find myself doing that more now than I ever have in my life. I spend a lot of time by myself. I just retreat into myself. I'd much rather be alone. But I use these videos, to try to teach, to try to encourage, to try to put some help out. And I do with people that come through and whatnot. But I see a lot of men get up older, and they just get grumpy, and they just get withdrawn, and they get bitter or sad or depressed about not being the man that you used to be. And we need to celebrate not being the men that we used to be, because we are now the men that we are. And now, as the men that we are, we know more than the man that we used to be. We have experienced more than the man that we used to be. We have more experience. We have more knowledge. Hopefully we have more patience. Hopefully we have more gentleness. Hopefully we have more knowledge. Hopefully we are now using 90% of our brain and 10% of our body. And if we were still the man that we used to be, we couldn't do that. There's not very many men who are young and strong and wise. Usually, and there's exceptions, the strong youth don't require wisdom. Okay? And I think there's times when the only way we can acquire wisdom is when we cannot substitute strength and youth. And so we've got to do something else. So we start moving in to that thoughtful side, into that teaching side, into that mentoring side. And not just mentoring, okay, this is how you ride a horse, but just mentoring, this is how you be calm through life. This is how you face obstacles. This is how we had another grandson, and he's smaller, and we brought his dad's horse over, and this little guy loves his dad's horse. It's Ransom, and he wanted to ride Ransom, and his dad is deployed overseas right now in the military, so his mom brought him out, and so I got Ransom out, put a saddle on Ransom, and I could tell Ransom was not as chill. Yesterday was pretty chilly out here, if I can use that word again. There was a little tiny breeze blowing, and Ransom's not an old head like Boone is, and he wasn't as chill as I would have felt comfortable with. And so we put Tyrell on Ransom, and his mom started leading Ransom, but I walked along beside of him, and he had one of those down poofy vests on, and so I just had a hold of that vest just in case, because I just was not confident in Ransom. He's not a mean horse, he's not a bucking horse, but he's not as laid back as Boone is. And so as we're walking along, there's a lot of activity around here. There's gravel pits, and there's big equipment, and they're building on two houses right there. A lot of, and something kind of startled Ransom a little bit, and he just kind of dropped his haunch and scooted sideways really quick. Well, of course, the little lad would have come off, but I had his vest. And so as Ransom scooted out from under him, I just picked him up out of the saddle by his vest and sat him on the ground. And he started crying. He's a little guy, all right? He started crying, not because he was hurt, but it scared him. But he settled down. And so we were able to sit there and say, look, you're okay. You're not hurt. This is what happened. And this is what happens, but it's okay. It's just part of it. And so his mom asked last night, he wanted to come back out and get back on the horse. And I said, and so Mama told him, Deanna told him, his grandma told his mama, well, if we get the chance, we'll put him back on the horse, but we'll put him on Boone. We'll just, that way we just know. And so he too went through a bit of a learning process, but he went through it with with an old timer there who was reading things and saying, okay, we're going to take an extra couple of precautions here and to keep someone from getting in a traumatic situation, which will scare them off of horses forever in case something happens. And so we got him through it. And he went through a situation with a horse that wasn't ideal, and he came out the other side, and he's like, okay, all right, can I get back on? And so we're going to do that today. But so, fellas, life is stages. All right, it's stages. We start out as babies, then we become children, we become teenagers, and we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Then hopefully we become responsible working adults who sacrifice a lot of ourselves, a lot of our hopes, a lot of our wants, a lot of our dreams in order to provide for our family and to raise family, to produce worthwhile, profitable, grounded, balanced adults into the world. And then when that gets done, we're kind of getting up late middle-aged years, and we can still do stuff physically, but we can do the physical stuff smarter, hopefully. But then we just keep moving on, and the less and less physical that we can do, then we move more into the teaching mode. I don't watch many movies, and I very rarely use one as an illustration or quote it. But there was a movie a while back. One of the scenes in that movie just haunts me. It has haunted me since I've seen it. It was one of the sequels to Lonesome Dove, and it was one that had James Garner in it, and he was playing an old Captain Call. And when that scene ended, he was sitting out in front of a cabin, and he had one of those big whetstones in front of him that you work with your foot to keep it turning, and he was sharpening hoes and shovels and axes for the farmers. That's what he was doing to make a living. He was too old to do anything else. And after all that he had done in his life, a captain in the Texas Rangers and moving the first herd of cattle from Texas up to Montana and starting a ranch, and all of his ventures and all of his life and everything he had done, he ends up sitting in the front yard of a cabin sharpening a hoe for a farmer, and that's how he's making a living. And at first I didn't know what to think about that. And then I realized, you know what? He's still being productive. He's still helping the younger ones with their work and what they're doing. And he's still moving forward. And guys, as you get older, you still have a lot to offer. You still have a lot to offer. You still have a lot that you can do. You still have a lot that you can help others do because of your experience now and the knowledge that you have gained. Don't become morose and resentful over what you no longer have and what you can no longer do. But move into that natural next stage of life calmly and acceptingly and happily, knowing that, thank God, you're not the man that you used to be, and you're in a position now where you can help others take a better step on the path in front of them. And we don't want to quit. We I made the video a while back about find another horse to ride. We don't want to quit. I mean, we're still going, but there's things that we say now, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. We're still planning pack trips up in the mountains, and we still go hunting. And I had fellas in Florida that are friends of mine. I haven't talked to them lately. I don't know what their situation is with this hurricane. I was going to go I was going to go hog hunting with him in October. And one of them has a little short, he makes custom knives and these little battle axes. And he had snuck up on a hog and killed it with that battle axe out there hunting hogs, and he used a hatchet to do it. And he's like, yeah, man, come on down, Dwayne, and we'll get. I said, no. Man's got to know his limitations. I'll go out there and gladly I'll trace around through those swamps or whatever you got out there, and we'll go hunting and we'll do what needs to be done. But I'm going to draw the line at sneaking up on one with a doggone tomahawk. And so we're going to work smarter, not harder. There's certain things we leave to the youth, but that doesn't mean that that things are done. It doesn't mean that you're done. It means you have an opportunity to be something that you never took the opportunity to be. And you have an opportunity to accomplish something in others that you never took the time to accomplish before. So embrace it, okay? And because this world needs the Boones and you and me out there more than ever. But if we don't step up and be productive in our own way, then everything we've done and everything we've experienced and everything we learned will have all been lost and it'll be for nothing. All right? So I hope you guys have a good day. And, what do we got here? Perdomo, Habano, Maduro, bourbon barrel aged. Old gentleman, a good friend of mine in Tennessee introduced me to these cigars, and they're pretty good. I like them. So that's what we're having today with coffee and just sitting around out here in the sunshine. And so anyhow, I wish you guys all the best. Be safe, be logical, and be reasonable. Have fun, and don't let your life's experience die with you. All right, pass it on. We'll talk to y'all later.